Welcome back to Dave's Gone By, and they say that art is in the eye of the beholder, but sometimes art is kind of in the nose of the beholder because it leaves a certain lingering stench if the art is done right, or should I say wrongly. And then sometimes it's a pretty fine line, but someone who wants to walk that line and also see how that line is drawn is Louise Sacco, and she helped found and currently heads a museum out in Dedham, Massachusetts called the Museum of Bad Art, or as they like to call it, MOBA. So Louise is here with us to tell us all about bad art and her museum of it. Hello, Louise.
Hi, Dave. Great to talk to you about our museum.
Yeah, the obvious questions. How did this come about? How did it start? What gave you the idea? And how did it steamroll into a whole actual museum space?
Well, it started in 1994 when Scott Wilson, who is an arts and antiques dealer, was driving slowly on trash night, the way arts and antiques dealers do, and saw a picture in a frame by the trash in a Boston neighborhood, and he threw it in his car, figuring he would throw out the painting, clean up the frame, and sell it.
Yeah.
His friend, Louise Reilly, saw this painting and said, wait a minute, you can't throw that out. You know, that's so bad it's good. I want that. And Jerry hung the painting in his house. It seemed to attract other bad art. Scott found more, and other friends gave him more. And before you know it, Jerry had the beginning of a really bad art collection. And one day, 5 of us were sitting around talking about it, and we realized that everybody loves bad art. You know?
Oh, yeah.
And that we ought to start a museum. And we thought it might last a year or two, and here it is 13 years later, and the Museum of Bad Art is still going strong.
Okay, now, oh God, so many questions are in my head right now, but first of all, how would you define bad art? What makes it bad as opposed to or good?
Well, it's so one thing that's interesting is that our definition actually overlaps with the definition of good art for the most part.
Okay.
Which is that it needs to be original, needs to be sincere, needs to speak to people. You know, we're looking for art that people react to. But then where the good art people say, and it needs to be finely done and good by all kinds of aesthetic judgments, we say, and it also needs to be too bad to be ignored, is the phrase we use. And that's the kind of thing that if you're walking past a gallery with a group of friends and somebody says, wow, look at that, it's 50-50 whether it's look at that because it's so good or look at that because it's so bad. But it's the non-boring stuff on the good end and the bad end that we think belongs in museums.
So, I mean, I always sort of wonder when I go to the Museum of Modern Art or places that carry that kind of modern art, and I see the giant paintings with white everywhere and one slash of color, or even something like a Mark Rothko, which is, to me, boxes on top of boxes. I know it's supposed to evoke some kind of mood. But I wonder if one day you threw one of those in there and you didn't tell people it was an important multi-million-dollar Rothko, would they go, man, I could have painted that in 45 minutes in my garage?
You know, I don't think so. I think that a Rothko or a another real modern master, just because they're abstract and modern, doesn't mean they're bad. You know, I think that the abstracts that we have, you would look at, and if you had 100 people there, none of them would really see meaning in them. You know, whereas on the good abstract art, if you have 100 people, 30 or 40 of them are going to see something.
I have to wonder, what was the first painting that was salvaged?
The first painting is still an icon with us. It's called Lucy in the Field with Flowers. Oh. And like so many of the works that we've ended up with, there's a story. This painting it's a woman standing in a field, and the breeze seems to be blowing in 2 directions at once because some things are going one way and some are going another, and the back of the field might be on fire, and the sky is yellow for some unexplained reason. And we loved the painting. We showed it. It was in news stories. We got a phone call from a woman who said, "That's my Nana," and we got the whole background of how this picture came to be painted. And it was after Nana died, and the picture was painted from 2 photographs. In one of them, Nana was sitting, and in one she was standing, which explains why it's really hard to tell. Is she sitting or standing, and does she have a seat glued to her bottom? We became great friends with the family, with Nana's family.
Wow.
One of the things that we do always with the paintings that we exhibit is we interpret them for our audience to help them understand it.
Well, that is one of the beautiful things about it. Like, there's on your website, which is, where's that, museumofbadart.org, you have pictures of many of your paintings and their descriptions. Like, here's one of The Athlete, which we call a startling work, and one of the largest crayon-on-canvas pieces that most people can ever hope to see. That got me right there. Just the bulging leg muscles, the black shoes, the white socks, the pink toga, all helped to make this one of the most popular pieces in the MOBA collection.
Well, we believe that our interpretation is the value we add to these pieces, because anybody can find bad art. It's everywhere. And we find it in the trash, flea markets, yard sales, dead guys' houses. People are always sending us stuff that their grandpa died and they found this painting in the attic. But what we add always is the interpretation.
Now, have you had any of your paintings at this point loaned out to other museums? Do they travel? Do they circulate?
Oh, sure. We've done we did an exhibit a few years ago with the Suffolk County Art Museum in Virginia. We've been at the Ellipse Gallery in Washington.
Now, these are quote-unquote real galleries.
Oh, yes. These are our serious art people. We last summer sent an exhibit to Ottawa, to the Saw Gallery in Ottawa. We've been at Art Week in Calgary.
And all of whenever these paintings are sent out, though, they're as a group and labeled under the term bad art.
Oh, yes, they're sent out as a show, the best of the Museum of Bad Art, or from the Museum of Bad Art, with our interpretations, and they're very well received everywhere.
Now, you had that lovely bit of history about that first painting, and the woman and her relative and all that. But have you had instances where painters, or I guess, do you do sculptures as well?
We have sculptures as well.
Where the makers have contacted you and said, how dare you put me in a museum under that title?
You know, when we founded the museum, we were concerned about that would happen, and that we would offend these people or hurt their feelings, which we didn't want to do. We're celebrating this art. We love it. We want to share it. We want to have fun with it. But what has happened is that some artists have come forward and said, hey, that's my piece. Always, they've been pleased that we're exhibiting it.
Really?
Yeah, artists, we've learned, want to share their work. They're trying to communicate something. And we're part of that. And we, beyond our name, the Museum of Bad Art, we never make fun of these pieces because we love them. So we describe them, we show them, we share them. And artists want to do that. They want people to see their work, to talk about it, think about it.
And there's also that old thing of any publicity is good publicity.
Exactly. It's not unusual for professional artists who are earning their living this way to send us pieces. And
really?
Yeah, and it took us a while to understand that. And what we finally came to understand is that they can't lose, because if we turn them down, they can tell themselves, well, I guess I'm not that bad. But if we accept them, they can tell themselves, wow, I'm in a museum.
Well, what do you turn down? Something that's too good?
We turn down about 90% of what's offered. And some of it's too good. Some of it isn't art.
Like what? Like an advertising or
It's craft, it's paint by numbers with the wrong colors in all the wrong places. Well, that can be interesting, but we don't consider it art.
Oh, okay.
Or it's just unoriginal and boring, or it's deliberately made to be bad, which is uninteresting.
Bingo.
You want sincerity.
I was wondering about that, because one of the things that this radio show prizes is outsider music.
Yes.
Something that was developed or codified by a DJ over at WFMU who had a show called about outsider music, and it was a very, very, the definition had some wiggle room,
right.
But it was very important that the songs themselves were sincerely done. If the guy was intentionally bad, it didn't cut it. Then it became spoof or a joke, and it didn't work. It was really about people who thought they're trying to get something across, and something got lost in the translation.
Exactly. And, one of the things that they are doing and that we are doing is celebrating people's chance to fail. Fail. If you're going to fail, do it spectacularly. Throw your heart into it. Throw it all out there, and let's see it. One kind of painting, we have some genres almost, or at least categories of art that we see. And one category that I find very interesting is artists who are overthinking it and come up with things that are so overwrought with meaning that you can't even sort it out. I mean, the symbolism just gets piled on, and they're mixing metaphors visually. And
it's Miro and Picasso in the same painting.
Yes. And you just don't know where to start.
Oh, cool.
And another thing is that we, with the professional artists, we get things that are very well done, beautiful technique, and people who really know what they're doing. But the question is why? And one example of that, you may have seen on our website a piece called Sunday on the Pot with George.
Yes.
And that's a pointillism piece. Pointillism, we've been told, is really hard to do. All those little dots to suggest all kinds of detail. Why would you go to all that trouble to make a good-sized painting in pointillism? It's 22 by 37 inches, and do a picture of this fat middle-aged guy in his tidy whities sitting on a toilet.
Yeah. Well, I can answer that question, because even seeing it small on the website, that made me laugh pretty much more than anything else. When I saw that, I was just broke into this spectacular grin. Even though the title's a little, Sunday on the Pot with George, ha-ha. But just seeing that, I was, wow! That's why he did it, because it's wow!
It is. It really is. And this picture, in fact, illustrates another thing we see often with bad art. Bad artists often have trouble with hands and feet, so they often just run them off the end of the canvas, like this one. It looks like he ran out of space when he got to the feet. And he even elongated those legs a little bit so that the feet would be off the bottom.
Minutemen, the superheroes of photocopying, printing and binding. Minutemen, no job too big or small. Minutemen, family run since 1975. Minutemen, 1315 Broadway in Hewlett, Long Island, next to the new Loman Shoe Store. Tell them Dave sent you for 10% off. Minuteman, hero of our photocopying dreams.
Art isn't easy,
even when you've amassed the exciting surprises.
Suddenly you're past it,
All compromises, and then when it's all a gold record, Art's even easy, any way you look at it.
Hi, this is Louise Reilly Sacco. I'm the Permanent Acting Interim Executive Director of the Museum of Bad Art. You're listening to Days Gone By on WGBD.
We are talking with Louise Sacco of the Museum of Bad Art in Dedham, Massachusetts. By the way, I couldn't get your title there. You're not just curator. You're...
Oh, no, I'm not the curator. That's Mr. Michael Frank. No, I'm the Permanent Acting Interim Executive Director.
Permanent Acting Interim Executive. So does this mean that you're looking for another executive director, or does the permanent part say, no, you're it until you die or the art kills you?
Well, I was the interim acting because the board of directors had trouble deciding which it should be. And a couple of years ago, we finally managed to get the museum mentioned in the National Enquirer, which had been a long time goal. And I used that to say, look, I need to be appointed to a permanent position. And the board resolution on that was unfortunately worded, so I ended up as the permanent acting interim executive director.
All of this sounds a little bit jokey, but again, I'm assuming you're a nonprofit organization. You have a board.
We're a nonprofit organization with a board. We run a museum which is now located in the basement of an old 1927 movie theater outside Boston, and it's free.
It's free?
Free.
Because who would pay? No, I'm kidding.
Well, people often make donations to help us cover our costs. And of course, like every museum, we sell books and T-shirts and tote bags on the web at www.museumofbadart.org.
Are you breaking even?
Yeah, we are.
Wow.
We're covering our costs. We sell a fair number of books and T-shirts, and two exciting things. We have a second book coming out in spring of '08, and we have some Boston filmmakers who are doing a documentary film about the Museum of Bad Art that next fall we expect will start to show up in festivals, perhaps on PBS.
Oh, fantastic. And so, in other words, they're following some of the artists around, as it were, and also you guys and the history of the whole place.
Yeah, and they covered, we don't know how much will be in the film, they covered an auction that we have. Every few years we have a rejection collection auction where we auction off things people have sent us but that don't make it don't meet our standards. And every piece comes with a certificate that says this was rejected by the Museum of Bad Art.
Wow. Now, how come you have the right to do that? Doesn't it go back to the artist? Or are we still talking things that were salvaged from...
These were salvaged. They were sent to us. They were bought at yard sales or flea markets. So...
Wow.
We have a lot of fun with this stuff. And another thing I want to make sure your listeners know is that if they go to our website, they can sign up for our newsletter, and they will hear then about new pieces we've acquired, events. If they ever get to the Boston area, they might want to come to an opening. But they can just keep track of what we're up to, and we'll know, for instance, when this film comes out and when the book comes out.
Let me ask you, still getting on the idea of the bag, are any of your paintings clowns on black velvet, which people seem to assume is the watershed or the standard by which all bad art is measured?
That's not even bad art in our definition. That's kitsch, which is a whole other story. Big-eyed babies and clowns and Elvis on velvet.
Dogs playing poker?
Dogs playing poker. That's all kitsch, and it's not original. It's mass manufactured product. So it's not. We appreciate that, but it's not what we collect.
So, or however, if an artist tried to draw a clown on black Velveeta, that you might...
Well, we'd be a little concerned with the sanitary issues there. We try not to have pieces that are growing colonies of mold.
There are artists. There was this artist somewhere in, I think, Italy, who sprayed a hotel room with processed cheese.
Yeah, we definitely would not be interested in that. We just we don't have the sanitation staff to keep up with it.
Now, what about, when you talk about the mass marketing of art, I forget the guy's name, but what about artists who...
Thomas Kincaid.
Yes.
Thomas Kincaid, we certainly agree is a bad artist, if an artist he can be called. But our budget is pretty limited. We are never going to acquire a Kincaid, nor are we that interested in it, because it's more of a manufactured product than anything else.
Do you ever look at your... How many, roughly, paintings and sculptures do you have in your collection at this point?
Well, we know that because we've just been doing some work on the inventory. We have over 400 pieces.
Wow!
Now we only have space to exhibit about 35 or 40 at a time. So every few months we change the show, put up a new show, a new collection. Right now the collection that's hanging has one section on blue faces. We suddenly realized that we had an awful lot of paintings that feature people with blue faces, so we pulled that together for a theme.
Probably because Walmart had a sale on bromothymol blue 15 or something that week.
Well, that's one artist, when we asked about this, one artist said, well, blue paint is cheap.
Really? Oh, my God.
That's so you may be onto something.
Now, but the other thing is, do you ever, once you acquired these things and a part of the museum, and you're maybe going through them to pick your next show, or you're walking around once your next show is up, and do you ever have these doubts where you look at it and go, wait a minute, that's actually not bad, that's good?
It hasn't happened yet. I suppose it's possible. We do have visitors who come in and want to argue about our judgments and, say that, gee, that's not that bad, that's really good. And we love that, because what that means is that people are looking at it and thinking about it and they're engaged by it. And we contend that if you take a bunch of kids to visit our museum before you take them to the Museum of Fine Arts in Boston, they're going to enjoy both more, because we're kind of giving them permission to disagree and to have their own judgments. And we're not going to just say, well, because this is in our museum, you must believe this about it.
Well, the real money for arts organizations tends to be in education, tends to be like school groups. So what you really need to do is to start getting teaching artists in there to teach the kids how to make rotten art.
I hadn't thought of that, Dave. I like this. We do get a pretty steady stream of school groups in, and we have a lot of fun with them, and get them talking and expressing themselves. And if they're little kids, we usually get them doing their own, doing some artwork for us with crayons. This is Louise Reilly Sacco. I'm with the Museum of Bad Art, and anytime I'm on Long Island, I listen to Dave's Gone By on WGBB.
We're talking with Louise Sacco of the Museum of Bad Art in Massachusetts. And before we finish up with Louise, I wanted to get to that other thing, because how much of your time as a person is spent dealing with all the duties that you're taking care of in the museum? Because you do a lot of other stuff.
I do. I am a radio show host, a concept you're familiar with. Here in Boston.
Really?
Yeah.
What show, where, what, how?
The Frugal Yankee Radio Hour is a weekly show about spending less and enjoying life more. And, of course, we also have a website, frugalyankee.com. So I do that. I'm a marketing consultant to some small companies. So I'm spending probably I would tell my husband I'm spending a day a week. It's probably more like 2 days a week on the Museum of Bad Art.
Well, that's cool. And as long as the other stuff is keeping you busy. And what does your husband do?
He teaches graduate schools of education.
But he's not involved in the museum at all? Or?
He's not.
Not.
We do have a curator, Michael Frank. He's a professional musician, and he's our curator. And we have some other volunteers who come and go and help us as are needed or sit on our board. Do
you think there's going to be a point, though, when you outgrow the Dedham Community Theater basement?
I don't think so, because it's such a good fit. There's a nice historic connection between movie theater lobbies and bad art. There's that, and also the fact that our very good friends at the Dedham Community Theater give us space for free.
Oh, well, yeah. That's even better than the Joseph Papp deal with New York for the public theater.
It is.
He had to pay $1,
Yeah, we don't even pay the buck.
No wonder you guys are making the prop. Now I get it.
Yeah, right.
Right. The damn T-shirts is that you're not paying rent.
We're not paying rent. We have volunteers doing everything. We're not paying salaries. So, we've got some costs for our website and for some framing and for some maintenance and things like that.
Oh, and the postage, I'm assuming, when you're sending the art around is probably quite high.
Paying to get things shipped, boxed up and shipped and all of that. But if we're buying art, we won't pay more than $6.50 for a piece. And most of it we get donated.
Oh, how did you arrive at $6.50? Where did as opposed to like $10 or $5?
I don't know, and that was said in 1995. So our curator is actually leaning pretty hard on us to push that up to $11 or $12, which I suspect will happen soon.
Or if you start doing kits, you've got to do it at like $6.99. Because then if you start accepting a little bit of kitsch into the museum, it's got to be $8.99.
Right, yeah. I hadn't thought of it that way. We still are, thrift stores seem to be our best source. And our curator gets to know the owners of some of the thrift stores, so they know that if he gets his eye on it, they're not going to get more than $6.50 for it.
Oh, Louise, this is great. Again, we're talking to Louise Sacco of the Museum of Bad Art. And as we go, I do want to ask some of your very favorite pieces of bad art, either from your collection or from wherever you've seen it.
My favorite piece this week, and it does change, is called Pauline Resting. And Pauline is a voluptuous nude who is lying across a sofa or something. And it was evidently painted by someone who has never seen a nude human woman. She has a dislocated hip, and she has breasts that are somehow suspended from her shoulders, and she's just very interesting. And she has underarm hair that seems to have been added later with a magic marker.
Either it's a really terrible rendering, or this is a Polish woman in a terrible accident. But no, I'm sorry, I kid. Now, and here's a question to throw you, though. What is your favorite piece of great art?
Oh, wow. No one's ever asked me that before. It would have to be one of the Renoirs in the MFA, the Museum of Fine Arts here in Boston. And there's one that I can't think of the name of right now, of a woman dancing with a sailor that's just wonderful.
Have you ever come across a piece of bad art by a great artist?
Oh, sure. Our contention is that any artist can paint a piece of bad art. But one thing we're not interested in doing is I don't want to go into the Met and start telling them that, well, that's really bad and you should give it to us. We want them to respect our curating decisions, and we will respect theirs.
Has the Met ever been in any kind of touch with you, like a little feeler, or just sending you a note saying, hey, we think you're really cool? You'll never be in our museum, but we think we're really cool?
Yeah, the Museum of Fine Arts here in Boston we've been in touch with. And, in fact, a few years ago we had scheduled a softball game with them.
Oh.
But it turned out that the city of Boston double-booked the softball field and the game never went off. And what we wanted to do there was to bet our best against their worst, but they wouldn't go for that.
Oh, it was a museum of bad planning there.
Yeah.
But anyway, this has just been a totally fun conversation with Louise Sacco, the permanent interim something director, what was that?
The permanent acting interim executive director of the Museum of Bad Art.
And it's at 580 High Street in something called Dedham Square in Dedham, Massachusetts. I guess where is that in relation to, like, Boston?
8 miles south of Boston.
Oh, cool. So people are driving, they can get there pretty quick.
And if they're in Boston, they can even get out by bus, public transportation.
It's free admission at the Museum of Bad Art. Find out more at museumofbadart.org. No the. Also, you can find out more about your radio show. When is that on?
Sunday afternoons from 1 to 2 in the Boston area, and, of course, streaming over the web from WNTN.com.
So, and if people want to go there is a frugalyankee.com
yes.
website, too. Louise Sacco, thank you so much, and I wish you much really horrible, wrenching art.
Thank you, David.
In the years to come.
And I've had a lot of fun talking to you.
Thanks.
Bye-bye.